Okay, autism is a very broad category of neurological disabilities. And so to make a single rule that actually applies to all, as one might be able to do to some extent for a visual impairment, which is a progressive scale, autism is not actually a scale like that. So even though people use things like high functioning and low functioning, it actually doesn't work like that at all in reality. But there are, one of the things that makes autism kind of weird is that you can actually, you may sometimes want to specifically recruit an autistic person because autism offers certain advantages if you've got the right kind of breed of autism. And I will be speaking in the breakout session about non-speaking autistics who have very specific advantages as well. But I'm going to tell just two short stories about instances where we were recruiting. I work in the training of project management. We work with our customers to bring project management into the organization formally, which means, amongst other things, that you might want to, well, it's one of the things that you should be doing, is you have somebody who fulfills the role of a scheduler, sitting with a program like Microsoft Project, making dependencies between activities, assigning costs to them from resources, and then scheduling when something is likely to happen, and then marking off what the deviations were. Okay, so you could do a generic course on something like that. It doesn't really help you in the workplace, so that's why we work on the projects that people are doing. So we had a client who wanted to learn how to use the resource allocation, a certain feature of Microsoft Project, and he was a project manager, and he said, "How long will it take him to, me to teach him how to do that?" And I said, "Well, it'll take an afternoon, but are you sure that this is exactly what you need?" Well, it very soon emerged that they would need a full-time scheduler, and he wouldn't be able to do that. So I said, "Right," and my colleague said, "You're going to have to recruit for that now, since it's a new company. You can't recruit within your own company for someone with the right traits. What you're going to be looking for is somebody with the following stereotype. He doesn't dress very fashionably. He might wear his pants too short. He won't make eye contact, and he'll probably speak in a monotone. And he probably is 40 years old and he lives still with his mother, and has very rigid tastes and so on." And that would be the profile of the person who is likely to actually have the skills that you are needing. So he said, "Well, I know somebody exactly like that, a family friend, and he still lives with his mother, and he's very nerdy and so on, and he like rambles on a single topic." I said, "Okay, send him to me for an assessment." So the candidate arrives, very nervous, and I looked out of my window and I could see, okay, so there he's getting out and he's really flustered and, and like, is this the right place? He came in, I first calmed him down before I started the assessment, and I put him through an informal test for what used to be called Asperger's syndrome, an online test, and he had to answer multiple choice questions. But I could just see, looking at him, yes, this guy, it takes one to know one. Yes, I'm definitely dealing with an autistic guy here. And we put him through a strengths finder test as well, which some of the HR guys may know. And when this prospective employer asked me for feedback, he said, "How has the test gone so far?" So I said, "Well, I'm halfway with the tests that I'm putting him through. So far, he looks perfect, but I still have more tests to do." The employer then made a very big mistake. He employed him before I finished my tests. Now, we have a stereotype of autistic males who look like this, that they should be very good with computers. This guy was so bad with computers that he didn't even know that copy and paste was a thing. So although he then got employed, he had a dreadfully difficult time trying to, learn how to use a computer, to use a very difficult software program. So don't think just because somebody fits some of the stereotypes that it's going to work out. Fortunately, because he was a family friend, he could be reassigned, and his pedantry, in other words, his great fussiness, having everything right, meant that he could go onto their building sites and be a fussy inspector, which they needed, and he had no compromise on lack of quality. So they were able to reassign him with that. And he would get very angry, and he'd fly all over the country, and things are not right on that side. But that is what they needed. So it was a bad thing that happened, which happened to have a good flip side. Now, I had another instance, and here I'm allowed to mention the client's name. We were training Cape Town Carnival. So they present a carnival. They also have an organization which is called Cape Town Carnival. And there they had an internal team, and I usually like to recruit internally. So I was looking for someone with autistic traits. who could be turned into their scheduler. And there was nothing that really stood out for me other than the office manager, who was a very fashionable young woman, or fashionable in her own way. She was attractive looking, not nerdy looking in any particular way, but she had one particular trait that stood out, namely that she was supposed to do reception as well. And she would usually not hear the phone because she had her earphones on, and they were always annoyed with her for this. In other words, she stood out as having a sensory problem. She was doing this to actually blot out the clutter, which is very common amongst autistic people. We can't stand the noise, the light, and all these things. So I said, okay, let's put it to her, and she seems to be quite good at meticulous things. Let's put it to her to be trained in Microsoft Project. She said, yes, she'd love to be trained in this, and can she do it at home, and can she practice on her computer as well? And we were like, okay, checkbox number 1. That sounds pretty good. You know, she's sensitive to the detail, which is important in this job. She has the interest in it. So when we got into the boardroom to do the training, and later on, by the way, because she worked out very well, the boardroom became the place where she had to end up working, because she could not work in the open plan, because she couldn't concentrate there. And we had to impress it upon her employers that you must, in order to get her productivity, you must make this accommodation. You must allow her to go and work there whenever anybody's not there. So anyway, as we were about to start training, we moved into the boardroom, and somebody was just busy leaving from another meeting, and she said to this other person who's leaving, oh, Shelly, I just want to tell you about this meditation technique that I've just discovered. It's really so good for my OCD. Look at her, and I said, why did you never tell me you have OCD? You're perfect. That's what we need. So this OCD meant that she could be very fussy about the naming of tasks, the spacing of characters, which would later help in searches. So we started the training session. After we'd entered a whole lot of tasks in what kind of looks like a spreadsheet, and we linked them together, I switched to another view in the software, which then shows what the tasks look like when they are linked together with lines in between them. When we switched to that view, it looked like a sunburst, because one task had quite a lot of other tasks coming out of it. And at that moment, she said, oh, wow, that looks so beautiful. And then we knew we had the right person. She went on to study project management further. She was perfect for that role. But it shows us that sometimes what we think we have in front of ourselves is not actually what is there. But we're looking for autistic traits in a lot of employees, which can make a world of a difference to an employer. Thank you.